Another season, another Conquer title, and another set of new Adept weapons. Today, I'm going to be getting you ready to dive right into this season's selections of Grandmasters, covering builds, loadouts, upcoming strikes, and of course the loot. GMs will be available in just a couple days, and like last season, you can run all of them right away. You don't need to wait for the weekly rotation. As always, GMs will require you to be 15 levels over the seasonal power cap, in this case 15 to 85. You're also capped at this level, 25 under the strike itself. So if you're new to these, you're gonna have a fun time. For modifiers, GMs always have Match Game and Extinguish and at least 2 types of champions. New from last season are the Acute Elemental Burn modifiers. 25% damage dealt of a given element, but 50% taken. This burn is set per strike, so let's just go right in and see what we're looking at. For the most part, we have a pretty tame selection of strikes, so this is actually a great time for newer folks to get your Conqueror title done. There are a few challenging ones in there, but nothing too crazy. In order, we have Proving Grounds with a Solar Burn, Cabal Champions, a handful of shields, and a little bit of RNG to their elements. Those high value targets throughout the strike, they are completely randomized. 2 Insight Terminus, the only GM this season with a Void Burn. This one has Void and Arc Shield, Barrier Unstoppable Champions, mostly Cabal with a few Barrier Hobgoblins early on. Pretty easy, but the boss can be a bit of a pain. Ward of Nothing, Solar Burn, all 3 champion types, the only strike of the sort, with Void and Solar Shields. This one seems really scary at a glance, but honestly, it's very easy and very farmable once you know what you're doing. The Corrupted, a fan favorite, everybody loves this one. This feature-length film of a strike has an Arc Burn this time around, Taken Champions, Unstop Overload, and all 3 shields. This one really has been getting easier with every sandbox that we see it return, so building into the Arc Burn this time around will really help you out. Inverted Spire, Arc Burn, all 3 shields, Unstoppable Barrier Champions. Nothing crazy here, just a little bit of a slog. Finally, Armsdale returns again. Solar Burn, Void Solar Shields, Cabal Champions. Bring Aeons and Galley and you'll be done with this in under 10 minutes. Probably the easiest GM in the entire game. With that out of the way, let's talk about the rewards real quick. We have 4 returning weapons this season. The Silicon Neuroma Sniper, the Duty Bound Auto Rifle, Hothead Rocket Launcher, and the Plug 1 Fusion. The 2 new adepts this season are both reissues, the DFA 140 Hand Cannon and the Horror's Lease Rapid Fire Pulse Rifle. DFA is lacking, to say the least. This guy is competing with Austringer, IS Luna, and Fatebringer in that kinetic slot, and that goes for both PvE and PvP. I guess a time payload roll wouldn't be too bad to play around with, but I wouldn't really chase this guy. Horror's Lease, on the other hand, will definitely be worth farming out. Unfortunately, it no longer rules the rangefinder, but there are some nice options here. Perpetual Motion is a best in slot perk with Frenzy for PvE. You could also try Under Pressure for PvP roll, and the 4th slot also offers high impact reserves and kill clip. Lots of great choices here, fantastic archetype, definitely get one. Now unfortunately this time around, it's looking like every strike will have its own unique weapon, meaning if you want to farm Horror's Lease, you're going to be stuck farming Corrupted. Or you can wait until July 6th to even start running GMs so you don't get locked out from the catch-up node. Maybe this will change, I guess we'll see when GMs roll around. Nobody knows, we'll see. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. Subclasses and builds. This is what you came here for. Solar 3.0 really brought out a handful of new viable options, while the old go-tos are still as strong as ever. Let's just get right into it. Hunters, you're going to want to spec out for Resilience, Recovery, Mobility in that order. Remember, Resilience is buffed this season. It now grants a 40% resist to all incoming damage in PvE at tier 10. Absolutely nuts. Really try to hit this in every single build. Night Stalker is an absolute top tier subclass. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, especially with Void 3.0. Moby's Quiver, almost always best in slot super. Great option for debuffs, room clear, burst damage. Gambor's Dodge will be your go-to for smoke builds. Marksman's only worth considering for solo challenges mostly, and that's a whole monster of its own. I really like Vortex Grenades, but pick your favorite. You should almost always be running Vanishing Step and Trapper's Ambush. Stylus is great, but smokes will really help out your team a lot more, and you want to be a team player. For fragments, I personally always run Undermining, Obscurity, and Persistence. You can mix and match these a little bit, whatever works best for you, but at the very least, always run Obscurity and GMs. The Invis is just insanely good. The best exotic to pair with Night Stalker is Omnioculus by far. Double smokes, damage resists, free smoke regen, they're nuts. Grab Forfeit also gives a nice handful of buffs to Invis, but it doesn't really help out the team as much as Omni does. Aeons with a Finisher mod are amazing for any subclass, but especially a Night Stalker when paired with Obscurity. Finally, Frosties are a great all-around solid pick for any subclass, but I really wouldn't recommend them over anything else here. Gunslinger went from a bit of a niche peak all the way to the top with Solar 3.0. Blade Barrage is now one of the best supers in the game. The dodge is your choice. The old options still work great, but the new Acrobat's dodge grants a team damage buff on command. Pick your favorite knife. Not really going to matter in GM level content. I'd personally go with Proximity. Fusion Grenades have always been my favorite for damage this season on all classes, but Heal Nades are amazing as well. For aspects, just use Knock 'em down and on your mark. Gunpowder Gamble is fun and low level content for sure, but it only offers one fragment slot, and it doesn't really hold up on anything harder than a Playlist Strike. Solar Fragments are much more subtle than Void and Stasis. Honestly, the selection is almost entirely up to you and your playstyle. Really just aim to increase the Scorch abilities, Radiant healing effects, and maybe a few stat boosts. Gunslinger Hunter should almost always run Assassin's Cowl in GM content. Easy invis on a high damage subclass, you can't beat that. Aeons are always a strong pick, and you could also consider Charge Galanor for super regen. Caliban's Hand is nice for crowd control, but I'm not really sure if it's going to hold up in GMs. Give it a try if you want. The only excuse for playing Arcstrider in a GM is that you need to get that one Triumph done for your base title. Just don't even bother. Don't do it. No. Revenant has always been a really strong pick. Stasis is great for ad control, though just be careful not to freeze champions. It really makes them bug out, makes them hard to deal with. Glaciers or Dust Fields for grenades, Touch of Winter with Stasis Shards, some fragments boost ability regen, damage resist, throw on Assassin's Cowl or Aeons, and you're set. That's all there is to it. On to Warlocks. Build for resilience, recovery, and discipline in that order. If you want to run a solar build, stick to Well of Radiance. Dawnbleed got kinda shafted, not gonna lie. Run a Healing Rift unless you're using Starfire Protocol, in which case you want to run Nemp Rift. Just like the other classes, I'm going to recommend either Fusion or Heal Nades, but that really depends on your exotic. For your aspects, Touch of Flame is a must-have, and the other is up to you. I really do like Icarus Dash in PvE. It provides a lot of maneuverability, which is incredibly good for high-level content. Heat Rises, on the other hand, has a new healing mechanic, so that could be worth a try as well. Just like for Hunter, your solar fragments are fairly subtle effects. Benevolence is the only must-have I would say is here for a support role, but the rest are all your choice. I do recommend running Torches and Ashes at a minimum for a Warlock. Solar builds also have a lot of exotic options. I'd personally pick either Starfire Protocol for insane grenade damage output, or Phoenix Protocol to constantly have a super ready for your team when you need it. Dawn Course is pretty nice for ad control, but just remember it works pretty differently than it used to. It's all about the Scorch effects now. Finally, Sun Braces are a fan favorite and perfectly viable for ad control. Voidwalker is a little bit more limited when building for GMs, but it is still a very strong pick. Cataclysm Nova Bomb will be your super of choice, and use a Healing Rift unless you're running Signet Filaments. Vortex Grenades are always the strongest pick for PvE, always. And you're going to want to build into them hard with a Chaos Accelerant and Devour. My Voidwalker builds always run Echo of Expulsion, Undermining, and Obscurity. The first two are just massive grenade buffs, while Obscurity provides really nice emergency invis. Whatever you put on for fragments, just really build into that grenade. Speaking of, on Voidwalker, you're almost always going to want to run Controverse holds for that regen boost. Aeons are a great pick too, especially with Obscurity, but Controverse for damage is the way to go. If you want to run Arc, you have one choice, Chaos Reach with Geomags. I really would not recommend anything else, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend this over the other options, but I mean, there are some Arc Burn strikes, and you might need to get that Triumph done, so it works. Finally, Shadebinder, by far one of the strongest GM subclasses in the entire game. Cold Snap Grenades paired with Osmomancy Gloves along with Bleak Watcher turrets, you'll be shutting down entire rooms with little to no effort. Just toss a grenade, toss a turret, you're done. I always run Glacial Harvest for Stasis Shards for my Elemental Well builds, but Ice Flare Bolts are a fantastic choice as well. Spec out your fragments accordingly. Just really try to maximize your grenade energy and your survivability. Titans are in a fantastic spot this season, and they will be a powerhouse for GMs this season for sure. Sunbreaker builds can run either super, and always run Throwing Hammers, always. Fusion Grenades, my favorite pick, but consider Heal Nades as well. Consecration really is not worth it for PvE. It's nice for PvP, but that's about it. Run Roaring Flames and Sun Warrior. Sorry, Soul Invictus now, whatever you want to call it. Sunbreaker applies a lot of Scorch effects, especially with hammers, so pick out your fragments accordingly. I highly recommend using this setup here. Solace, Singeing, Ashes, and Torches. Orderly Splendor will be your exotic of choice for survivability, but also consider Phoenix Cradle for more of a support role. Sentinel has not changed much. Even last season, Sentinel is mostly about Banner Shield. The Shield Bash is nice for some movement and strong burst damage. Vortex Grenades as always. Controlled Demolition is a must-have, especially for the healing aspect. You can run either Bastion or Offensive Bulwark for your second aspect. I do prefer Bastion personally for the on-demand over shield. Obscurity is the only must-have fragment here. The others are entirely your choice. Just don't run Expulsion because you already get that for free with Controlled Demolition. While Ursas have always been the exotic choice for Banner Shield, Heart of Inmost Light is actually a really strong contender for ability regen and increased ability damage. Of course, you can also run Aeons. Keep your team stocked up with ammo. Want to run Arc? You're running Thunder Crash with Curse of the Falling Star. You know how it goes. That's all there is to it. Behemoth is nice, but honestly, I wouldn't really take it into a GM. It's not a bad choice, they're just better. If you do want to run Behemoth, build around crowd control with the Crystals, Shattering, and Stasis Shards, and pair it with Heart of Most Light or Aeons. If you are running a Stasis Shard build, you're going to want to turn that into an Elemental Well armor build. So let's call it there and take a look at armor. I'm honestly surprised how many people are still sleeping on Elemental Well builds. The ability regen that you get from these is insane, and every element of armor offers a whole bunch of really cool options to create and benefit from wells. I could spend an entire video just on these. Instant health regen, damage resist, stasis shards acting as wells. There is so much you can do with these, and if you're not already using them, you definitely want to start doing that. While we're talking about mods, there are also a couple Charge the Light mods that people don't really realize exist. Striking Light, 25% damage resist just while sprinting. Reactive Pulse, nearly invincible during a finisher. Excellent utility mods. Try to fit these in your builds if you can. And of course, on that subject, we have our seasonal mod selection on the artifact. We'll get into the weapon mods in a little bit here, but let's go into armor first. Nightmarish Opulence and Unquenchable Thirst will significantly boost the origin traits of a handful of weapons, and for only 1 point apiece. Armor of the Dying Star, must have for elemental resist. Revitalizing Blast is a little weird on paper. It sounds just okay, but if you've got the slots for it, it's actually really nice. Withering Heat has always been pretty solid. Not really worth 6 points, but it's a nice debuff, especially with Solar 3.0. Overload Solar Grenades barely work. Just don't use them, just avoid this one, it's bad. The only mod I would say is absolutely worth looking at in the last column for GMs is, of course, Classy Restoration. Healing on demand on any solar subclass, absolutely busted, and a complete pain in the ass in PvP, but that's a whole other story. Even better, Warlocks and Titans can actually proc it without spending your class ability. Use your ability while you're sliding off a small ledge, and it actually activates. And you can do it again. If you're running a solar subclass, you want to be using this mod, no exception. Finally, let's close this out with a quick look at the weapon selections for the season. We have Sidearms and Pulses for Anti-Barrier, Scouts for Unstoppable, and SMGs and Autos for Overload again. Yeah. Our special ammo mods of the season are Overload Choice Rifle, which works pretty decently well, and Unstoppable Glaive, which, I mean, it works great, it does what it says, but please don't run a Glaive in a GM, no. For your non-exotic weapons, try to run Always On or Easy to Activate damage perks, such as Explosive Payload, One for All, or Frenzy, or utility perks like Adaptive Munitions. On-kill perks are fine, but you're not usually slaying out in a GM. You want consistency, and you want to build into the Elemental Burn as well. Ideally, every team member should have at least 2 champ types covered, but utility options like Blinding Nades, Chain Reaction Waveframes, or even Wither Horde are really useful in some strikes. Absolute go-to exotics are almost always going to be Arbalest and Divinity. Arby makes really short work of barriers, and match game becomes a non-issue. Divinity is the most consistent overload stun in the game, always has been. Osteostriga is actually a fantastic primary ammo pick from last season, and is easily the most consistent primary for Overload SMG. Aegir Scepter is a powerhouse, and now has Overload this season, so pull that one out. Pair it with Revitalizing Blast, and you are nuking entire rooms. You could also consider Leviathan's Breath. It actually got a nice little buff this season, feels good to use, has Intrinsic Unstoppable, does some nice damage. A lot of great options. Linears are going to be the go-to heavy option this season. Make sure you have a few on deck with good damage perks like Firing Line. Storm Chaser especially is going to be the best option for Corrupted. You can probably melt that boss before you even get teleported. Snag a good one now. Or you can just slap on a galley, 2 legendary rockets, a couple pairs of Aeons, and speed run these easier GMs. Match Elemental Burn or run Chokeclip. We may not have Lucent Finisher this season, but Aeons will keep the galley spam meta alive and well, for better or worse. And that about wraps it up. Hopefully we didn't go on too long here. Apologies for this season's video being so late in the season, but I mean, we still have a good month and a half, so hope it helps. If this guide has helped you out at all, or you have some tips you want to add, leave a comment, let me know. If you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel. Check me out on Twitch too, live every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching. See you soon.